This girl went to the priest and she said, "I'm sorry, Father, forgive me, for I've sinned." "What is your sin, my child?" the father said. "What did you do?" She said, "Father, yesterday when I was looking in the mirror, I saw how beautiful I was. And I couldn't get over my own beauty. I thought, wow, everything about me is so perfect. And I thought of everybody else around me who wasn't as beautiful as me. So, Father, I've committed the sin of vanity." And the priest said, "No, my daughter, don't worry. That was an honest mistake." So his question is in my book, The Ancient Science of Mantras. I also realize I increase my own workload by writing these books because good readers have great questions around them. So I have spoken about infusing life in a mantra and other samskaras, the rituals you can perform. What if somebody just took a mantra and never got initiated into a mantra, and they started practicing it with great intensity, like there is no tomorrow, quotes, like there is no tomorrow? Would they attain Mantra Siddhi? Um, or they would say, "Kisne likhi hai ye kitab?" First of all, the examples you quoted of the mantras, those are Swayam Siddh mantras. Those are like Siddh mantras already. They're highly awakened. They don't need the samskaras for most of the samskaras to be performed. You can straight away invoke that mantra and do the upcharas and start the nitya karma or naimitya karma or purushcharana. But let's say you do pick a mantra which requires those samskaras. I don't see why not. I don't see why you cannot have mantra siddhi without a guru. The thing though is, if you are not moving right on the path, then how would you know? You may still discover something extraordinary that happened to Columbus. He came to India, but he ended up in uh, discovering the USA. And he thought the people he saw were the Indians, and he called them the Red Indians. But he was, of course, amused. There were no spices that he was hoping to get. But regardless, he discovered a vast land that nobody else had discovered before him in that manner. Of course, there were people living there, Native Americans. But so when we are working towards Mantra Siddhi, when we are really in it, it's very much like playing music. What happens when you become good at playing a certain song? It kind of everything starts to fall into this rhythm. It becomes effortless in that moment. And particularly if you harmonize your music with chords and you're playing the melody. So once you get the rhythm of the harmony, somehow the melody just fits in. It's like fitting in a square peg in a perfect square mold. Until then, you are trying, you're attempting, and you feel frustrated, and you're trying again, and you don't quite know if you can get it. If you take a piece which is much above your current level, you will lose motivation very quickly, and you may not even touch the musical instrument for years. If you pick something very easy, very below your current level of understanding or skill, you will once again lose interest, and you will say, this is too easy, and there is no challenge in it. So what happens when a guru imparts a mantra? It's a progressive thing, because they will introduce something that's just slightly more difficult than where you are, so that there is always a low hanging fruit for you. So when you get the taste, you would say, look, I am willing to develop my strength and stamina and go longer. This disciple went to um, his master and said, how long will it take me if I stayed here and served you um, and meditated 6 hours a day? How long would it take me before I would gain that moment of awakening or enlightenment? The Guru said, 6 years. He said, what if I put in 12 hours every day? Guru said, 9 years. He said, 9? If I understand my math correctly, this is not adding up. What if I 18 hours a day, I just meditated? What would happen then? 20 years, the Guru said. He said, how can that be? And the master said, with one eye on the goal, you're only looking with the other. Your effort is already half. So what happens when we do something under supervision or initiation? It encourages us, that whole process, to focus on the journey, to not be so driven by the end goal that you may lose motivation or feel frustrated, or you might say, Angur khatte hain. There is no point in all this. So initiation doesn't necessarily mean something mystical always. Initiation doesn't mean that, boom, prapti. Initiation saying, please chhod do mujhe, let me go, right? And you say, no, I want to continue, but you say, don't. So one thing is beyond certain. If you don't give up, you will most certainly have some kind of attainment. You will most certainly unlock something about you, something in your consciousness, something about the world around you, something in the universe, some deep, inaccessible things that were inaccessible to you earlier. You will unlock something. Now, what that something is, that nobody can predict. Nobody can guess. Nobody can predict. Nobody can say it with absolute certainty that that's what you will get. But if you keep moving, you will get something. And sadhana, I always say, never goes waste. Whether you're initiated, uninitiated, less initiated, or want to be initiated, or you've read one book or 10 books, if you are moving forward, you will get somewhere. And that is basically the fundamental of sadhana. Those sages, those seers who found those mantras, who saw those mantras, who invoked those mantras, that was their basis too, right? When you are walking the road less traveled, you may not have footprints that you may follow, but you will certainly leave some behind for others to follow, which is just as, I think, important than always having footprints to follow. I'll just say this one sentence, this one last point. It is very easy, and that is why religions have grown in the world that they have, because people want to simplify things. People say, tension aap le lo, hame bata do subah utھ ke kya karna hai. Just tell me 3 simple things I can do in the morning, I can do at night. Ho jayega na usse. A very famous yoga guru promised people great health. Said, pop these pills. He built a 10,000 crore empire, and people are still unhealthy. Because you cannot ignore the other aspect, eating right and exercising right and sleeping right and breathing in clean air and drinking clean water and so on. So people always want easy solutions. They are saying, look, I don't want to do the thinking, I don't want to do the exploration, I don't really want to do the reflection. For that, I have hired you, Guruji. I'm coming here, I'm paying my 1,000 rupees, whatever. You're giving me 3 meals, but outside I can get them for 300. So clearly, I'm paying you a certain amount. You do all that. You tell me, please, If I do these three things you are telling me now, will they be enough? Sometimes it's too much for people, even when during initiations the mantras change, the steps change. They say, oh, इतना दिमाग लगाया था उस मंत्र को याद करने में. Now 1 year later you're saying इसको छोड़ दो, दूसरा कर लो. उसका क्या करें अब जो वो किया था? जिस प्रकार पुराना वस्त्र त्याग देते हैं, कुछ लोग ऐसे नहीं भी त्यागते, फटे पुराने रखेंगे अपने पास सारी उम्र. Just how we discard the old clothes, we've got to move on, as Buddha would say, when a very famous story from his life, when he crossed, he said, the disciple asked, what to do with your teachings? They said to the Buddha, what to do with your teachings? Is it a lifelong thing? It's very difficult to get up at 3 in the morning, eat my only meal of the day before midday, and then twiddle our thumbs and walk around, and then wait for the next 14 hours or 24 hours before we can eat something. What to do? Is it lifelong? And Buddha said, let's say a river is there that you have to cross. It's too deep. You can't wade through it. What would you do? You'll use some kind of a boat or a raft. Yes, Tathagat. And once you've crossed the river, what would you do to the raft? Leave it behind. Exactly, Buddha said. You won't drag it with you to the city, will you? Unless it's tied to you or something. You'll leave it behind. You'll say, okay, somebody else can use it, or when I revisit this place, I can use it. So that happens upon awakening as well. Not that you become an atheist. Big difference. We can't say, oh, I don't do anything now. I don't need to. As long as you have that feeling, you haven't gotten there yet. It's more about you feel a certain conviction and you feel great freedom and you develop this extraordinary compassion. And just like a snake would shed its old skin, you shed your ego and you stop actually feeling that somehow I am better or I'm more superior, because there is no I left. Even the proclamation that I am that somewhere has a notion of ego in it. So when you look at somebody, you see in them the same beauty as you would see in you, even more. Those illusions, those delusions, they just wither away, they just evaporate. This girl went to the priest and she said, I'm sorry, Father, forgive me, for I've sinned. What is your sin, my child? The father said. What did you do? She said, Father, yesterday when I was looking in the mirror, I saw how beautiful I was. And I couldn't get over my own beauty. I thought, wow, everything about me is so perfect. And I thought of everybody else around me who wasn't as beautiful as me. So, Father, I've committed the sin of vanity. And the priest said, no, my daughter, don't worry. That was an honest mistake. So those vain thoughts, vanity is the first thing that disappears or starts to disappear when you move towards awakening. Because what is the measure of ego? How can we say somebody has ego or somebody doesn't have ego? Just because somebody doesn't agree with us doesn't mean they have ego. Just because somebody doesn't say, yes, boss, doesn't mean they have ego. How do we know? What is that gauge? What is that parameter through which we can ascertain whether somebody has ego or how much of it? First thing that happens is that vanity disappears. And that is the number one sign when you really feel that, yes, I'm doing my job and you're doing your job. Just because my job entails speaking to a group of people and your job entails maybe listening to a group of people, doesn't mean that one is more superior than the other.